Do we bother with a cold open?
Nah.
Podcasts. A Frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast Captain Slug. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new episodes, to seek out new jokes and new references, to split infinitives that no one has split before. Captain Slog, Stardate Christmas. We're not dead. We just took a breather because we got busy. Mark got busy with work, and I got busy being diagnosed as disabled. So,
and in many ways,
yeah.
Are they not the same thing?
No, you can't be busy when you. Yeah, I can't run upstairs anymore, so I can't do anything in a rush. So I do it at quite a lackadaisical pace.
Isn't you have to work the disabled diagnosis that you get off the DWP these days?
Yeah, especially because I've got one of those invisible disabilities, which is a lot like Wonder Woman's invisible jet, in that it's shit. So yeah, it's just because right, okay. Here's the thing: I can't balance too well anymore because I've got like nerve damage in my leg and my arm. And that means I need a seat on the tube, but I don't look like someone who needs a seat on the tube. So I'm thinking of getting a walking stick that I don't need so that I don't feel guilty about getting people to get out of their chair for me.
You can have a sword in it.
But then, this is the problem, then I need to fake a limp as I'm getting off the train. I'm walking through the station. Otherwise, I look like a bastard who's got a walking stick just to get a seat on the train.
Yeah. But then everyone near you, who lives near you, is definitely going to think that you're a faker. And
yeah,
the last time I was at yours, walking back home to the train station, I saw Danny Mays. And the actor Danny Mays, who's, if you don't know, he's the guy that Andor kills at the start of Rogue One. He's in a lot of British stuff. But I clocked him. Laura was walking beside me, and I tried to be as subtle as possible, and I said, "Look, there's Danny Mays," just as he, on the other side of the road, turned to face me. And saw me not doing my best to not point, but with my eyes go, "There's Danny Mays." And he sort of smiled back. So I think he likes me, but he's not going to like you. He's going to think that you're the guy who's faking it for a seat on the tube.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And are you prepared? He's not. I wouldn't call him a British national treasure just yet, but there's a good chance he might get there if he ever plays the Doctor or something. And he is personally going to think that you're an arsehole.
Well, the bloke who played the actor who played Chris Finch in The Office is a member of my gym as well, and I'm able-bodied enough to go to the gym. But if he then sees me walking around with a cane, then he'll probably think I'm more of a prick than Gervais.
Almost certainly.
Yeah, which is something you never want to be. You never want to be the biggest prick in the room when Gervais is there, unless you're Piers Morgan, in which case it's your goal. So, how you been anyway? How's Scotland and everything?
Yeah, it's all still happening.
Been told you've got to stay.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Not a lot to report, man. I guess your Christmas present really for this episode, other than the extended commentary, is just that I'm not going to riff 5 minutes moaning about the things that I've been up to. 'Cause I've not really done a whole lot, to be honest. I started playing Red Dead Redemption 2 again.
I can't. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a wonderful technical feat, but I just kind of get the impression that every time I sit down to play it, and I'm not going to sink 8 hours into doing some pointless busy work, the game is just vaguely disappointed with me.
See, I'm all about the busy work.
But it's like you go fish,
yeah,
and then you get shot by bandits, and it's like, well, it's a 4-day ride out to where you were. It's like, well, great.
I've decided, because in Red Dead Redemption 2, there's like an honour system where if you play as quite a good-mannered murderous cowboy, you get bonuses. And if you play as a bad-mannered murderous cowboy, you get fewer bonuses, and people don't like you. And if you're a good guy, they'll give you discounts in shops and things. And I cannot play a video game with a morality system as a bad person. Like I just physically can't. It makes me uncomfortable to do that. Except for The Witcher 3, where because I feel like it's part of his character, I'll have someone come up to me and go, "Oh my god, my only child. I had 7 kids." This is the kind of shit you get in The Witcher 3. I had 7 kids. 6 of them have been systematically killed over the last 8 years by witches. My last kid, my last baby, has been kidnapped by a griffin. You, professional monster hunter Geralt, can you go and get him? I have 8 pieces of gold. And the best thing about The Witcher 3, the mechanic and the mechanic, The Witcher 3 is a masterpiece on all mechanical levels. But the best mechanic in The Witcher 3 is when someone desperately asks you for help and says that this is all the money you have, you can ask them for more money. And they'll do it. And they won't be happy about it, but they'll find a way to scrounge it up.
I've tried to start The Witcher 3 on like about 7 or 8 occasions, and I'm just really bad at The Witcher 3 combat. So what that means is that, from my perspective, I know to everybody else, Geralt is this unstoppable badass. But to me, he's just someone who's all mouth, no trousers, because he likes to give it the big un, and then I walk through the woods and get killed by a bandit. It's like, well, fuck you, Geralt.
I've got a mate who loves the crafting system in it, not just for the weapons, but I think for the clothes as well. It's been a while since I played it, and he used to hate that the main story would take up so much time he could be spending as a world-travelling trouser salesman.
Okay, I've got a question for you. In a game that has got a morality system, what is your most evil thing you've ever done? Because my one is in Fallout 3. There is a point where if you go to Rivet City, which is the city that's on a big boat, and you go up to the top, there's a man who's thinking about killing himself, and you can either, if you're good, you can talk him out of it, all right? And if you're evil, you can talk him into jumping. And if you're me, what you could do is talk him out of doing it, and then push him.
I don't really know, because I find it difficult, even games in like Mass Effect, where you're not necessarily doing bad things, you're just doing renegade things, so you just make your character a bit more like Han Solo than Captain Kirk. And I just and some people will find this difficult to believe. I hate being rude to people, because I don't like their reactions, so I am just always, whenever it gives you the choice to press a button, I'm just like, no, I'll be a nice guy.
It's the problem is, it's when you ask me if I want to be nice or bad, and there are no consequences to my actions, the answer is, yeah, I'll probably go out my way and be a good person.
Yeah.
I'm only not a good person in my real life because it has a physical cost attached to it that I'm not willing to pay.
In Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a game set obviously in the cowboy times, I was like, you know what? This time through, I'm going to play it a bit bad. I'm going to rob people's houses. And the first house that I tried to rob, because it's not like in Grand Theft Auto where the houses are all close together. Because it's out in the plains, all the houses are really far apart, and you rob farmhouses. And I found this farmhouse with one of the little Easter eggs is that you can go into the cow shed, and there's a dead cow next to a dead body, and the dead body has his trousers down. But I was like, I'm going to rob this house. So I robbed the house. One of the dogs held me. I woke up the dog, and then I just killed an entire family. And I was like, oh, shit. But this is the way it's going to go. All right, fine. Because the thing is, right, you do get a lot of benefits to being nice to people, which is that people will regard you as a nice guy. But I don't really care about that, because I've played that before. And you don't get discounts in the shops, which is fine, because I'm really good at the Red Dead Redemption poker mini game.
Oh yeah, so am I. Basically, if you put a poker mini game in your video game, you've essentially given me the infinite money cheat.
Yeah.
Because I would just, I've sat for 6 straight days in the casino in town, and just like people leaving, going about their day, having their life, and then coming back in, and then I'm taking all of their money again.
I had a glitch once where one of the guys that sat down at the poker table, because what happens is you sit down and then throughout the game you'll like wipe other non-player characters out and they'll leave and someone will come in, and this guy came in and it was in Saint Denis, so it was the posh poker game, and he was smoking a cigar, and the animation that plays when a character smokes a cigar is that they finish it and then they throw it away. But because he sat down to poker, the game couldn't really figure out what to do with him, so he would just keep whipping out cigars, and rather than throwing them away straight in front of him, which he does when he's out in the street, he literally just threw it straight at my character. So I sat there for hours getting decent hands, and this guy just flicking cigars at me the whole time. And he wasn't happy.
No.
Fair enough, taking all his money off. But yeah, it's amazing because in the game, because a big part of the game is that you are part of like almost like a nomadic, like traveling camp. And
of bastards. That's it as well.
Yeah, traveling camp of bastards, and the bastards are always like, "Oh man, we're running out of money. We have to, we got to steal to survive. And any money that you get, the camp gets a cut, and you have to go and donate it." And one of the weirdest things that they implemented is they put in a ledger so that you can see how much money people have given to the camp.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know why they put this in, because none of the other characters are donating anything. You go down the list of the ledger, and it's like, Molly gave $2.50, Bill $1.16, Pearson deer carcass, and then Arthur, which is your character, the person you play, $300, Arthur $225, Dutch $1.25, Arthur an authentic copy of the Declaration of Independence, like. And they're constantly going, "Oh my God, we're so poor," and then I am standing there going, "I just donated $3,000 to use that I won off some guy that kept throwing cigars at me." So I don't know what I know. Obviously, the game has to be diegetic, right? But it's like, come on, man, this is I don't buy that I'm poor.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we're all poor and terrible. It's, well, I've got enough money to buy like a mansion because I just bought all the clothes in the shop just because I was bored. And there's this big nice mansion out that was filled with previously slave-owning racists, and I killed all of them, so we can live there.
Yeah. And my morality went up, so you better believe I killed all of them and then robbed their house. Don't even try to go quietly.
So, Star Trek.
The motion picture.
The motion picture. Yeah.
So for years, I have heard that this film is rubbish. And this is the one that's boring, and this is the one you can safely skip, and this is the one that they're surprised the Star Trek franchise even managed to survive this, and this is all I've heard for years. This is the start of all the odd-numbered Star Trek films are terrible, etc., etc., etc. So I've put it off. I've always put it off. I watched the Star Trek movies, or some of them anyway, before I was even a Star Trek fan, and even I knew to start at the Wrath of Khan. So I sat down, I watched Star Trek the motion picture, and Eddie, I loved Star Trek the motion picture. I think I might love this one more than any of the other ones. I think I'm to say I prefer it to Wrath of Khan is a very subjective. I recognise that Wrath of Khan is a better film. It was like an experience I've never had. I adore this film. And I'm gonna use that as a preface because I am gonna talk a lot of shit about this film.
Oh yeah, no. So I've got vague recollections of I think seeing this movie, but I think it was when I was like about 11, when I was like, oh, there are Star Trek movies, and like I saw this and like this is not a movie an 11-year-old should watch. No. Under any circumstances for so many reasons. So I was like you, I was kind of like have this memory that Star Trek, the motion picture, is the bad one. And then I came to come see it, and I'm like, it's genuinely fascinating on two levels. One, as a film, it's fascinating that how it's made, like decisions that were done. But also just like the decision-making process behind making this film, I would love to have been in the room.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this is 1979, this comes out. So it's 10 years after sort of the franchise has been a big thing. And weirdly, there is a perfect blueprint of how you bring back a long dead like franchise that's not been around for about 10 years with a major film release. And that blueprint is the 2009 Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
It's not this.
No.
But what I find fascinating about it is no one's ever done this before.
Yeah.
Like, nobody had ever been like, oh, there wasn't any time prior to this that something that was a decade old, like, came back and some new creative people. And it's just so weird to me what they thought was important to include.
Yeah.
And what they didn't think was important to include.
So I looked into this a little bit, and Star Trek, when it first aired, was sort of moderately popular, obviously compared to what it is today, but even compared to how it was viewed in like the 1970s. So Star Trek, when it first aired, they kept changing the time slot. For season 3, they put it in something called the Friday night slot of death, which I think is 10 p.m. on a Friday, which is in America. No one is watching television. That's where you put a show that you don't want to pay for anymore that's still popular to die.
Yeah.
But the story apparently goes that there was So in order for a TV show at that time to be syndicated, it had to run for 4 seasons, which is usually 100 episodes. Then,
Yeah.
but because some people were huge into Star Trek, there was a guy who worked at like a local station in Boston, and he was a huge Trekkie, and he just went, I'll buy the syndication rights, even though it's not technically syndication length. So he bought them on the cheap, and then decided to show them every day at like 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. So immediately everyone's like, oh, what? This Star Trek's incredible. That's when Star Trek became really popular. Was on reruns.
Yeah.
So basically anyone who became a Star Trek fan from the 60s to the 70s more likely became a fan on reruns than they did watching the original airings, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my god, this has huge ratings. Other local stations around the country started buying it.
Yeah, and that's when you get, like, the fact that it was on every day, because they were showing it, like, daily, meant that it, like, pre-VCR, pre-home cinema viewing of any way, that you would still, plenty of people had seen all of Star Trek multiple times.
Yeah.
Like, they'd be like, go around, oh, this is the one with the Gorn, you know, and, like, get really into it. So it had this weird following that nobody else had.
Yeah.
And I feel like they were 2 years after the release of Star Wars. They've got this science fiction movie they're trying to make, and I think they could have done what all movies have tried to do since Star Wars, which was be Star Wars. And then they went, no, we got to differentiate ourselves somehow. So what if instead of Star Wars, we're 2001: A Space Odyssey?
I disagree slightly. I don't think it's fair, and I mean that Star Wars versus Star Trek is a dumb argument for kids, right? But
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to examine Star Trek the motion picture and not acknowledge that it's a direct response to Star Wars. I don't think they wanted to do 2001. I think that they wanted to do Star Wars, but they just...
But Star Wars...
But the problem is that Gene Roddenberry was in charge, and he was like, yeah, this is my Star Wars. I'm going to make it fucking boring and slow and deliberate and methodical. Because do you know what it smacked of to me? So I think we've talked about it on this podcast before. Laura is a big fan of Planet of the Apes, and I'd never really seen it. So we sat down to watch 1967, 66, whatever, the original Planet of the Apes film. And I was watching it, and I was like, I get why people went mental for this. But at the same time, this just proves to me that when Star Wars must have blown people's fucking minds. Like, no wonder it was the biggest film ever. Like, Star Wars must have fucking blown people's tits off. compared to
like
this.
when your big special effects scene, like your big special effects, this is the big action scene, is we're going to put two people in monkey suits on horses and drag Charlton Heston along through the net, right? Versus, right, okay, we've got 28 spaceships.
Yeah.
They're all firing lasers at each other. Like that, it's just
It's not
the
even
different.
that. It's like the fast-paced storytelling. Star Trek: The Motion Picture is so slow. Like it's 2 hours and 15 odd minutes long, and there is, I reckon, maybe 90 minutes of actual story in there.
Oh, it's a Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
You could do this as an original series episode, no problem.
Well, it was originally written as the two-parter opening for Phase 2.
Ah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. One thing I do think as well is when you say it's like it's you when it's easy to go 2001 Space Odyssey, but that's a lot of people don't realise that like 2001 A Space Odyssey isn't like an outlier for like science fiction. All science fiction in the 60s and 70s was like, watch Silent Running. It's a movie about a man trying to keep a tree alive in space.
Yeah.
And it's glorious. And it was a lot. No, we spent a lot of money on this miniature spaceship. We're going to show all of it. And we can't like have a camera swoop through it or anything. So we're just going to like hold on it as it goes past for 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they were like, we have spent $5 million on this model of the Enterprise, and we are going to get every cent out of that.
Interestingly enough, V'Ger, the ship that turns up in this, I did some research. Third biggest spaceship in like fiction. It's actually bigger than like the Warhammer 40k ones that are a city. They're like 5 kilometers long. V'Ger's 10 kilometers long. There is only two things that fall under the classification as spaceship that are bigger than it, and they are the Mothership from Independence Day.
Yep, makes sense.
And the Death Star.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is bigger than the Whale probe.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the Whale probe is technically like 3 kilometers shorter than V'Ger.
Shit. So it's so next gen is pretty action packed. The original series is pretty action packed, but and I know we keep harping on it, but the motion picture is super slow. But
yeah,
I like, as you say, that was equivalent to the sci-fi movies of the day. But that, like, I don't think it's even fair to call it the aesthetic of it, but the aesthetic of everything being super slow and really deliberate and like the slow moving spaceships, that's like, I would describe that as like ASMR for my eyes.
Yeah,
like
it's
so cool, and it's why. Because I don't know how we're gonna structure this. I think we're just gonna whack on with different bits. Because whatever, man. If you've watched this, you've watched this. If you've not watched it, who cares? But it's why I think a big thing that people complain about is that in this, the Starfleet uniforms are different, and they're all really muted and really boring colours and like greys and light browns and like very, very saturated, undersaturated gold. I don't think this movie would have worked if they were wearing the original uniform, if they were wearing the colourful stuff.
No, yeah, but it's also interesting that like I say, this was the first time this had been done. Like, and it's weird to see that when they were going, like they were sat around a table at some point and go, "What makes Star Trek?"
Yeah,
and at no point did any of them go, "Oh, the uniforms."
Yeah.
Or like that. They clearly wrote down what Star Trek is about, and didn't care too much about like the fan service side of things, which is, it is the way to go. I completely appreciate that. Like, there's world building and interesting things if you're a Star Trek fan that are in this, but it's in service of the story they want to tell and the movie they want to make.
Yeah.
Like, I love that you see. That was an interesting question for you. Okay. Klingon speaking Klingon wasn't really a thing in the original series. That was more invented in the movies. But we also have Vulcans speaking Vulcan in this movie, for more than we do Klingons speaking Klingon. And yet no nerd knows Vulcan. Like, it's not a language you can learn.
So, I have somewhat looked into this in the past. So, the Klingon language used in this isn't the Klingon language as we know it. The Klingon language, I believe, was created by a linguist for the search for Spock.
Right, okay.
So theoretically, you couldn't learn this one. And I wonder if maybe Vulcan is the same. I wonder if the only times we've ever seen Vulcan used, it's just gibberish.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so, like, I love the bits on Vulcan that we do get. That, like, Spock is going to rid himself of all emotion. And apparently that means he's only going to embrace logic, and the most logical thing is to not get a haircut. And then...
Well, why would you? It's going to keep growing. Of course that's logical.
And then he gets distracted. So I didn't know at first whether it was like it happened to be a sound effect. I was like, oh, he's been distracted by the space bongs. And then later on it turns out that, no, canonically that did happen. He felt the psychic presence of V'Ger.
Because he's a person, but then none of the other people feel it. So is it because of his unique half Vulcan, half human physiology?
Possibly.
Or did they just need a reason for Leonard Nimoy to look sad through this whole film?
I don't know.
Because he's...
but I think he puts all of the characters, like... So, when I say all of the characters, I mean Kirk, McCoy, and Spock. Like, the other characters are there, and they're important parts of Star Trek. I'm not going to deny that, but they are the supporting cast for those three characters. And you are telling the interesting story of Kirk taking back command after he's been an admiral.
Yeah.
And they've got like a bloke who was captain, who he just basically demotes. Which is Kirk being a dick.
Yeah, and he even specifically... So Kirk shows up and he says, look, there's this problem that's coming to Earth. I need to be in charge of the Enterprise because it's my ship, essentially, and I know how I'm going to solve it. So he goes on, he pulls aside Captain Decker and says, listen, here's the deal. I'm in charge, right? I'm taking the centre seat. This is Kurt's week, all right? Kirk's day. They're gonna do a big parade about me. And then he says, oh, and by the way, just for the duration of this trip, you're not only not going to be the acting captain, but we're actively demoting you to commander so that people will call you commander, which is like, yeah, that makes sense, I guess, but also that's horrible. Why don't you just leave him be the captain and then they can refer to Kirk as admiral?
Yeah, it's only there's two reasons. One is, like, from a dialogue perspective, they want people to call Kirk the captain. Fine, I get that. But the other perspective is that it's important to note Kirk's kind of a dick throughout this entire movie.
Yeah.
And then you've got a plot line with, like, they don't know whether Spock can be trusted.
Yeah.
Because he's like, he's been away, or can he, or is he going to be, or is he going to do something silly? And meanwhile, and all that's been going on with McCoy is that he's been growing a beard and wearing a leisure suit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the thing of when it's because there's a transporter accident because the V'Ger signal is messing up the transporter, and we go to one of the randos, one of the young Chief O'Briens in the transporter room runs into Kirk and says, "Listen, the last 5 members of the crew are here." But there's one guy that's refusing to step in a transporter, and Kirk just smirks and goes, "I'll get him. Don't worry." And then Bones, and oh my god, they were so proud of that new transport effect, weren't they? They held on that. And Bones shows up and he's got a beard, and immediately is just a horrible, cantankerous old fuck who's like, "I didn't even volunteer for this." They were like, oh, there's this policy of re-enlistment basically, I got drafted on this mission, Jim. Why the fuck am I here? And then we as the audience are like, of course you're here, Bones. You have to be here. This film doesn't work if we don't have the trifecta of Bones, Kirk, and Spock. But then I feel that one of the ways that it falls down is that Spock never really turns back into old Spock. It's like, we shouldn't trust him. He's being really weird. He's not being the old Spock. He's not giving Bones any shit.
I like they have the discussion about whether or not Spock can be trusted, and I want to say immediately Spock does some untrustworthy stuff. And when I say immediately, I mean 20 minutes later. But in that 20-minute time period, nothing else of significance happens. No. Because so I do like the Decker character, because like I feel like having somebody who's pissed off that Kirk's taken over, and also is like, as he says, is like, no, we've completely re-outfitted the Enterprise. You don't know the layout of this ship or its capabilities.
He figuratively, literally says to Kirk, "This isn't your daddy's Enterprise."
Yeah.
This isn't your dad's Star Trek, right? We've changed this. We saw Star Wars. We saw what Star Wars was doing, and we decided to do Star Wars Enterprise. And you don't know what you're doing. And Kirk, to Decker's credit, Decker is 100% right about that on every single count. Kirk never makes the right decision in this film.
Kirk tries to take them to warp when the warp core isn't ready. So what happens is everything goes slow-mo, and then they're going to hit an asteroid, and then he says, let's shoot the asteroid with phasers, and then Decker says, no, don't do that, use a torpedo, because if you do the phasers, you'll create a black hole and rip the ship to... Also, I've got to address it, okay? This movie doesn't know what black holes are, Mark, and I need to discuss that, right? V'Ger is supposed... So the thing of this is that the ship that comes back is coming to Earth, and at the end of the movie, you find out that the middle of it is one of the Voyager probes. It's been out in space for millions of years, right? Except it's not. It couldn't possibly, right? Have you any idea how nearby the Voyager probes will be by the time the Enterprise goes out into space? And they won't even be at the next star. But apparently, they went around what we used to call black holes, right? Stephen Hawking had published his research on what black holes are, right, in 1970. Okay, they had 9 years to maybe crack a book.
Yeah.
Right? And V'Ger didn't go into a black hole, get spun off to the other side of the galaxy, and then become a super intelligent robot machine that was going to come back and destroy the Earth for no reason.
I think, and as well, because they do mention wormholes in that weird slow-mo, that 17-minute sequence when they're in slow motion. And, well, the thing is, right, because I listen to a lot of podcasts about space. Back in the olden days, people used to say I've read a lot of books about space, but I'm not going to get high up on airs or anything. I've listened to a lot of podcasts about space. And what I've discerned about black holes is that they say, we sort of know a little bit about black holes. And then someone will inevitably say, if you go into a black hole, is it possible you could come out the other side? And scientists now are just like, sure, why not? There is no way for us to find out. So, whatever. No. If you think that might happen... What is it? Kit Thomas, the guy who designed all the black hole stuff for Interstellar, is probably like, sure, you might end up in an infinite fifth-dimensional library. Why not?
We don't know. We don't know what's in black holes, because the thing about them is, right, they're black.
Yeah.
Which means we can't see.
Can't get in them. Can't get out of them.
Yeah. Nothing gets in. Nothing gets out.
No.
It's not like the EU. It is like the UK.
Stuck in a black hole of sadness.
Yeah. The only way into a black hole is in a dinghy. Right.
So I quite like this Decker guy. I wasn't really sure how I would take him at first, because obviously as a Star Trek fan, I'm like, Kirk, take charge of this situation. And go for it and show them how it's done. But this Decker guy, I'm like, this guy knows, he seems to be making all the right decisions. And then at one point, he even suggests doing something else. Like Kirk says, let's send out a message of friendship. And he says, well, no, let's put up deflector shields. And Kirk gives him shit about it. And he turns around and says, I'm your executive officer. It is my job to suggest alternatives to the things that you want to do. Like, that's the only reason I'm here.
Yeah, yeah, you could have let. I could have. I'm literally only here for that purpose, and if you die, which you seem pretty determined to do, right, I get to take over control of what is, again, frankly, my ship.
Yeah, at that point, is the first thing that he does when Kurt's dead and they're all looking at his corpse, is Decker just go, Commander Decker here, computer says yes, and he goes, please reinstate myself to captain. Alright, let's get this boat home.
Let's, in addition to Decker, there is another character I feel we have to discuss, which is a Delton, Ilya,
Yep.
who arrives on the Enterprise, walks onto she walks onto the bridge. She's a bridge officer apparently, and I would say, like, she's introduced. She has maybe 4 lines of dialogue, and then she makes it clear that she's not going to fuck her. Right? She brings up that she's got. I had to look this up. So she brings up that she has taken a vow of celibacy, and this is what I'm about to tell you, Mark. Is I looked this up on the memory alpha, the like Star Trek wiki, and what I'm about to tell you is the most Gene Roddenberry thing you will ever hear.
Right.
So, Deltons take a vow of celibacy when they work on board a Starfleet vessel because Deltons release pheromones which makes them so sexy that if there is a chance anybody will have sex with them, they'd be too distracted from their duties to continue with that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And at no point does she ever even become frozen. So, was Gene just really holding back on all of his fetishes on this one character?
No, she does.
Is it because his wife was there?
She exists entirely to do a classic 70s Star Trek, science fiction thing of be the romantic lead's love interest who is dead, and then a version of her is brought back by something weird and spacey.
Yeah.
So he's emotionally manipulated into it. That's in like all, for some reason that was really big part of like all 70s and 60s sci-fi. It happened frequently enough that that you need to be on, if you're ever in space, right, and everybody's dressed slightly too sexy for you, then keep an eye out for that trope. I want to say something about this as well. I think that it is weird to see what I have described in my note as halfway Kirk. I'm used to seeing young Kirk from the original series, and I'm used to seeing Kirk from the movies, like older. Well, this is kind of like midpoint Kirk. It only exists for this one movie that he's like, you know, like middle-aged. That he's old.
I wrote 3 notes about this film while I was watching it, right? One of them is Decker seems to be and then I stopped. I imagine that was going to be like pretty on the ball or something. The other note is that the guy from Blazing Saddles? Because I think the main lad, what was the guy's name from Blazing Saddles? Like Conrad Summoner? Anyway.
I know you. Yeah.
The main lad, I thought he was in it. I don't think it is him. And then the last note is, this is like a film Kirk would make about himself.
Yeah. Right, this was never actually Star Trek uniforms. It's just in this is Kirk's memoir version of this, where everyone's dressed too damn sexy.
And also, he's the only person that gets one that differentiates himself from all the other characters on screen, so you can always tell when it's him.
There are some firsts in this movie I want to discuss. First, Klingon forehead bumps.
Yep, that's right, yeah.
Because that never got that in the original series. First time seeing Starfleet HQ down in San Francisco. First appearance of that never shows up in any previous ones. And also, just Bones with a beard. I love Bones when there's a thing in space and he's like, how comes everything we don't understand is a thing?
Yeah.
It's like, that's quite forward thinking for you, Bones.
Yeah,
who regularly calls Spock a thing.
Especially when he probably turns around and called the transporter chief like a racial slur immediately afterwards.
Yeah. There's some. Okay, so one thing I want to say about the actor who plays Decker, because I like the character. Did you think that sometimes in like the, I'm going to blame this on the direction more than anything else, that Decker looked a bit simple, like had a sort of vacant expression and kind of was staring off at while like I feel like when the scenes where he didn't have dialogue, like the director just went just stand there and didn't like tell him to react or do anything.
I think his direction was, I want you to look as confused at what Kirk is doing as you imagine your character would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I think, yeah, I agree. He did look a bit. In Glasgow, we have a word for it, glaikit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a not. Yeah, that fits.
Yeah.
That's a word that sounds like what it means.
Oh, Captain Decker, eh? Standing over there, that glaikit look on your face. What should we do? There's a big space thing. And then Bones is like, you can't say that anymore, mate.
I have a problem with V'Ger, the creature. So I don't think we've said what it is. There's a big spaceship coming to Earth, and it's sending out like it's broadcasting something that's gonna kill everything on Earth. Is that the thing? Isn't it?
So it's a cloud. It's a big cloud in space, right? Your classic Galactus, and there's obviously something in the center of the cloud. But anything that gets too close to the cloud is attacked. If it tries to defend itself, is attacked by like some sort of energy that just breaks it down, just makes it cease to exist.
Yeah.
And so no one really knows how to do with it, but everyone just assumes, well, there has to be something at the center of the cloud. Hopefully that thing can be reasoned with, because they can't figure out why it seems to be on a direct course for Earth.
Yeah. And it turns out that the reason is because it's a Voyager space probe that was supposed to gather information, and then it's now trying to return back to Earth and give this information. So all it's doing is what's actually broadcasting is it's asking for like a transmission back. So it's just asking questions, mate.
Yeah,
it's just asking questions. They're not harmful. It's not trying to ban me. It's just asking questions. It just wants to clarify.
It's got sunglasses on in its profile pic.
Yeah, drives a car.
Yeah. Took a picture in the car of in the front bit of the Voyager 6 space probe. But yeah, so right. we learned that it fell through the black hole and ended up on planet
Planet Robot.
Yeah, what's the name of the Transformers planet? Energon.
Yeah.
Cybertron, right? Which they really knew what they were calling it then when they came up with those robots. So it ends up on Cybertron. It finds these living machines, and they're like, "Oh wow, this is a god from the stars." The living machines then look into it and realize that its only purpose is to find information and specifically return that information to its creator. So they then make it take in so much information that it becomes sentient, and so its one goal is to return the information to the creator, who obviously hundreds of years later is now dead. So when it gets to Earth and it starts sending out that transmission code, and it obviously needs a code to tell it, yep, that's us, we're here, we're listening, press a button, give us the information, but no one knows what that code is, because those people are all stone dead.
Yeah, and also they don't know that it's like a NASA probe. And then when they find out, they're like, oh, just broadcast it back. And then it's it can't accept the broadcast because the bit's broken.
Yeah.
Decker, do you want to space fuck it?
So the Star Trekkiness of it all, the big question of it all is that V'Ger has apparently absorbed all of the information that it possibly can about every part of life, but it wants to know more. It wants to know what its purpose is, and it can't understand that it doesn't really have a purpose other than being itself, because it's a machine and it needs to keep constantly getting better and evolving. So what they need to do at the end, because it's already taken over the body of the Theramon chick, right? Alia.
Yeah.
Who clearly her species has no creativity whatsoever. It needs to absorb a human being so that it understands that, yes, human beings who we created you, but we ourselves are always looking for meaning. Like ideas of like higher planes of, this is a thing that Spock says, human ideas of things like higher planes of existence or things that exist outside of our imagination. It's weird because in Star Trek they have demonstrable evidence of that stuff, but but Spock says it's impossible to explain that to a machine that only understands logic. So they essentially need to absorb a human to give V'Ger imagination.
Yeah,
is how the movie ends.
And Decker, who is, it's very important to note, the only person who's in this room who isn't a main member of the original series cast.
Yeah, because the other one is already dead. She is the V'Ger. Yeah.
Is maybe that's why they changed the uniforms? Is going to go, well, everyone, the minute where people realise Decker's the only one in red.
Yeah, exactly.
We've given away the ending of the, because they do it at the end, like Kirk's like, put them down as deceased. And then he's like, no, don't put them down as deceased. Put them down as missing. Because they might be back at some point.
Yep.
But it's an interesting through point of everything Gene Roddenberry specifically had a hand in. Because obviously in original Trek you've got Spock.
Yeah.
As like this logical counterpoint to emotion. Then you have this. But then you also have like the story of V'Ger trying to find meaning is essentially Data's entire arc from Next Generation.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that this seemed to be a bit of a returning obsession for Roddenberry. And one thing I do need to praise Roddenberry about this movie is that he did have the common sense to not direct it. I get somebody, because did you watch what version of this did you watch? Because I watched the new up-resed like HD restoration. Is
that one the director's cut?
Yes, it is.
I didn't watch the director's cut. I watched the theatrical version, which from what I understand is even longer.
It is even longer, and I tried to watch an original cut, but it was a badly pirated version. And it's like right down to
the director's
like
cut I saw.
They've just used just up down to the fact they've got like a Klingon and a Vulcan font for like the subtitles rather than just subtitles turn up. Like little touches like that I quite liked. We haven't mentioned that when V'Ger, this again 10-kilometer wide, like long, one of the largest spaceships ever created, which is entirely a computer brain at the middle of a huge energy crowd, which apparently has I did check this 12th power energy. I don't know what that is, but it's mentioned. Spock does mind meld with it, which I've only written down as Spock, you mad bastard.
Yeah. Well, it was something I was gonna bring up earlier. I saw a great post on Tumblr that I'm now just going to read, right? And it was it's got the 4 pictures, and in the top left it says how casual Star Trek fans think Jim T. Kirk is, and it's like a dude, like a sexy model with his top off. And then next to it says how James T. Kirk actually is, and it's just a picture of a nerd. Underneath it says the same but the opposite for Picard. How they think Picard is a big nerd and how Picard really is just a sex machine. It says James T. Kirk graduated in the top 4% of his year, bullied by the jocks, is a history nerd, was so much of a teacher's pet that he cheated on an exam and was commended for it, was specifically referred to as a stack of books with legs. Jean-Luc Picard spent all his free time drinking in pubs and playing billiards, broke more hearts than he can remember, started a bar fight that ended in him getting stabbed in the heart, likes to explore dangerous ruins of ancient civilizations for fun, and wouldn't he even have become a starship captain if he wasn't this much of a hothead. Then the next thing down that I really like, it says, it's actually a problem a first officer, really. Jim Kirk seems like a wild man because he's standing next to calm, logical Spock. Meanwhile, Picard seems stately and dignified because he's standing next to, well, any alien physiology is bangable if you just put some thought into it, Riker. And it says, of course, then we get to the next layer, which is that Spock is the dude who told the Vulcan Science Academy to fuck itself while Riker plays the trombone.
Yeah, you don't like. I don't think people appreciate enough how much the crew of the original Enterprise are very specifically a bunch of insane maniacs.
Yeah.
Like Bones is back now because he's been drafted. Bones stays on the Enterprise now for another fucking 20 years. For no other reason other than I've got nothing else to do.
Yeah. What else have I got going on? Doing it at the Bones Ranch. My wife left me.
This is the only movie with Majel Roddenberry. Nurse Chapel turns up. She's now an MD. She's Dr. Chapel. And I only want to bring this up because she has 2 lines of dialogue, and one of them is delivered from off screen. And for a moment, I thought it was the ship's computer.
Yeah.
Because even when giving a proper acting performance, Majel Roddenberry sounds like a lifeless machine.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Lwaxana Troi is just she's playing herself. She's clearly just playing herself, and that's why I don't like her.
Should we? I mean, obviously we should at some point talk about what the movie wanted us to talk about, what the movie wanted us to see, which is the visual effects.
Yeah, they are amazing.
I think 40 odd years later, I still say this is one of the most spectacular looking films ever made. It's a feast for the eyes.
Yeah, and especially when you consider that it's not CG. I see the Enterprise in the new Star Trek now, and I'm like, okay, so it's just press the button.
Yeah.
I know it's harder. I know it's harder. I'm not being an arsehole, but it is easier than it's not just pressing a button, but it is easier than building a fucking massive fucking model of the Enterprise and then just filming it.
There's a concept that Adam Savage talks about quite a lot that's particularly well known and famed among spaceship designers, especially spaceship model designers, and it's something called the Greebly, right? Now, when you design like an X-Wing or design a new starship for the Star Wars, the Star Wars, as my gran puts it, what you do, right, is you put the Star Treks, you build a basic model, usually out of things from other model kits, right? So you just get bash it all together and be like, there's a new thing. But there's in model kits, obviously, you get the little things that are like the gearbox in a car that's like a little square shape, and you think, I'll just whack that on the bridge, or I'll whack that on the top of this, and that's called a Greebly, which is just a thing that really has no purpose, that they just thought looked interesting to cut out to kind of cut apart the shape of the silhouette so that it didn't look too similar. There's actually something called the Universal Greebly, which is when you know it, you will see it on every ship. Every Star Wars ship has this one little shape on it that I think they now actually make separately. But when you see the Klingon ships at the very start, and you see them for a long time, they spent a long time on these models, and you, my friend, are going to be looking at them in an unbroken shot for 2.5 minutes. And just the over-designed nature of like the way that they've stuck so many things on the top of it that clearly serve no purpose whatsoever other than to make it look like, yeah, this is a thing that people would actually build. It's just astounding. Yeah,
and then the alternative is the Enterprise, where they've gone, no, they worked really hard to make this sleek.
Yeah.
And like, I love there's a beautiful, like, they set up that the transporters are having problems, and that's mainly as a setup for one, we want to, like, it's basically a setup for making you have an excuse to have these shots. And so Kirk is going on board with Scotty in a little shuttle.
A space van.
Space van. And there's a moment where they do like a nice composite shot where you see a slightly flat Kirk.
Yeah.
Like in the window, looking like he's on ABBA Voyage. But it's clear like they were so, and proud, and rightly so. It's beautiful to see. And then when you consider that then in like then they also then made a tiny version of the Enterprise, so that they could put it next to this giant fuck off. Like, I think, like, in your head, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Star Trek: The Motion Picture, I know you think that the Enterprise is big, but you have no idea how small it is compared to Vija. Like they this guy said it's like Vija's 10 kilometers long, and if that is the right scale, then the Enterprise isn't a kilometer.
Yeah.
Like it's not 1/10 of. It's like it looks minuscule compared to it, which is I like that scaling of things where it's like, well, it is a big thing.
Yeah.
It's the classic MCU storytelling of like, well, we know how strong the Hulk is. Now look at this guy just punching the Hulk in the face.
Yeah.
Right.
Or the best use of it in the NCU, which is the shot of Cap getting up after Thanos has kicked him, strapping on the shield, and then you look at tiny little Cap in the bottom left against Thanos' army on top of the cliff.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my god, how's he going to get himself out of this one? and then Sam calls him, and you get warm feelings inside.
Yeah, it's one of the best moments in cinematic history.
Talking about the effects, just to quickly jump on to another movie, something I learned that I thought was pretty interesting is that in Wrath of Khan, the bit where they show the demonstration of how the Genesis device works. The Genesis device is a terraformer, so it's a missile that you fire at a dead planet, and then it turns the planet living. That shot is the first ever completely computer-generated shot.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
it has no elements whatsoever of non-computer. Now, some people will argue that because technically the first CGI shot in cinema is in Westworld, and it's the viewpoint of the robots, like that kind of weird sort of you'd know it, like they reused it for everything, but that kind of weird, almost pixelated viewpoint. That's the first computer CGI shot, but the one in Wrath of Khan is the first one where everything that you see was made in a computer, which is I think pretty cool.
Yeah, it was. This was we spoke about him before because he passed away. So like the model work on this was Douglas Trumbull, who did also Blade Runner, and this is just this. If you want to see, like, if I made a movie and I had Douglas Trumbull making fucking models of spaceships for it, I'd have fucking incredibly self-indulgent 20-minute fucking shots of the outside of the ship.
Yeah,
like, I like. It's like, so it's important to know, like, even like the phones you like talking about, I don't think we're doing justice to how many and how long they are. Like Spock steals a spaceship, a spacesuit, goes outside, and then like fires himself through a door, just so we get the view of him arriving in Vija, which is also what they were clearly making fun of in Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
And it's that's
like the Devil's Anus.
That shot, like when you specifically have to get rid of one of the pieces of tech that you've established that the movie has because of how you want to tell your story, it says a lot about where your priorities are. And I think the priorities were like, no, we spent a lot of fucking money on this, and I think they were aiming for an older audience, like, because it's like people who were Star Trek fans in, say, like their people who'd watched it in syndication had been like 15, 16, and then grown up to be like, by the point this came out, 25, 30, which is older than the audience that Star Wars was going for.
Yeah.
And I think that was a deliberate attempt to try and make, because like at the end it does end up with like somebody trying to essentially space bang a big robot computer brain in space, which I don't think you'd get in a Star Wars movie.
Not in an official one. No. Maybe in a TV show. Maybe it happened in Han Solo, and I just forgot.
Maybe I don't know. I haven't seen Andor yet. Maybe he bangs.
So good.
Maybe I've heard it's the best thing they've made.
It might be the best Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, and I just want to correct myself earlier. I've checked my notes. The Death Star is actually the second largest ship. The largest ship is the alien mothership from Independence Day.
Nice.
Is bigger than a Death Star. I'm assuming that a Death Star would be like a bit bigger than one of like the city ships, which are like the next one down on this list. Because I was basically to find out how big Vija was. Because if you go online, you can find a really great image that's like every spaceship from fiction compared for size, so you can sort of work things out. Vija's not on it because it breaks the scale. The thing that it would just be that and the whale probe would just be like most of this image, so you have to find like a separate image, and be like, then compare that to one ship from Voyager that turns up. I think that one's on the sheet, but yeah, it's crazy how like it's the effects shots as well, like the energy cloud they go into, like the way it disintegrates the Klingon ships. It's not, by modern standards, it's not good special effects, but by the standards of the time, would have been genuinely special.
Yeah.
Special effects. So, like, you can understand why it's done. Like, oh, it's disintegrating the Klingon ship. Now you know it's just delete on a computer. Whereas then it's like, no, we're gonna have it like a light up and fade out. It's so good.
Yeah.
If you're a proper science fiction fan, this is. Like, if you're a proper lover of, like, the Star Trek TV series, this is probably the most like that exists in film form.
Oh, I don't know about that, because I would disagree. I think that Wrath of Khan is the one that's most just like a bigger episode of the show. And this is more like this is what I loved about it, because you text me about it while I was watching it, because I was texting you, and you put it in a really cool way. I said, this film is absolutely fascinating, and you said, yeah, it's so weird and interesting, and I think that's what I like about it. If the other movies had been like this, but maybe with a more interesting story, I wouldn't have been that bothered. But this is like, like, you know that way that people say, oh, we should let Wes Anderson make a Marvel movie just to see what would happen. This is like, it's so demonstrably Star Trek, yet so divorced from what Star Trek normally is. It's like an experiment. It's like something. It's like fucking. It's like, oh, let's do Star Trek, but let's let Kubrick make it.
Yeah, it's got that element of being like, Star Trek fans like going to Star Trek conventions and dressing up as Star Trek characters. What if we give them a new uniform to dress up in that's completely different, and new characters? Like, it's not doing that annoying. Look, I love it when done well. Fan service can be okay. There is a moment in Wednesday where, due to genuine issues of the plot, she has to click her fingers twice, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I was so happy. It brought me joy. But there can be an element sometimes, especially with franchises like Star Trek, where, for example, in Picard, there is a bit where the rocker that Kirk told to shut up in The Voyage Home turns up, and it's the same character listening to a song that's a reference to it, and it's just utterly pointless. It doesn't serve any purpose. The idea that one punk has had no character growth in 40 odd years, right? It's like it doesn't. I'm not interested in it. I think that can get in the way of telling an interesting story.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, they didn't give a fuck about fan service. Like, there's a conference room on board the Enterprise with like that I'd never seen before, and there's like that. There's a bit where like he's talking to the crew about what's going on, and you could have filled that. Like, if that was modern day, like every alien in that crowd would have been someone that you could recognize from the original series.
Yeah.
You'd have been like, oh, that's a Gorn, or like that, whatever. Like, pick them all out. There's a bunch of fucking weird alien costumes that turn up. Literally, this is the only time they ever turn up in Star Trek, and I like that.
Where do you think that started, though? Was it the MCU putting in like Easter eggs for like future movies, and that's why we maybe have an overdoing of it these days? Because you think back and you think, like, I guess, I mean, Return of the Jedi is just a remake of A New Hope, really. But there must be other things. Like, there must be things in Tim Burton's original Batman that's like a callback to the 1966 series. I guess Superman 1 has the joke where he runs to a phone box, then realizes it's one of the ones that doesn't have any doors.
Yeah,
which is clever. Like they've used that in the story well. It's clever and it's funny, and I get it.
I think that we're missing the opportunity to just blame George Lucas. I think the prequels. I think the prequels have a lot of. There's a moment in the prequels. I think it's in the second one, and I don't remember exactly because I've not rewatched the prequels, and I'm never going to. But there's a moment where the Death Star plans are in the background.
Yeah, one of the aliens, one of the Geonosians during Attack of the Clones has a little hologram that comes up, and it's the Death Star.
But in the I was a fan of the books, which were apparently canon, and there's an entire the designer of the weapon system on the Death Star is a recurring character who's she thought she was making a mining thing, and she's around, and it's just to be foolish, and that's when it's for me it's I'm smart enough to know people will that I've put this in there, but I'm not smart enough to realise it will actually infuriate the people who it should bring the most joy to, and that's where I think it goes. I choose to blame George Lucas. I think little references and little nods here and there,
like the Millennium Falcon flying in Revenge of the Sith, but you can barely see it.
There's no reason for the Millennium Falcon to be there. It doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to have Anakin Skywalker be the person who made C-3PO, because it doesn't make any sense. Because how comes he never reacted to things like C-3PO was oh, my boy, or spotting R2
all right. Here's a question then: does Vader ever see C-3PO?
He must do. He sees R2. Definitely.
Yeah, it's probably. Oh, there's that one blue one.
But that's the thing. I think that that's where I think it comes from is this need to be I've not seen the Solo movie, right? But I guarantee you there is a bit that explains how he knows what Minox are. I don't. Because they were in, you don't need that, and that's the thing that I think you can get. Is sometimes you get bogged down in this slavish. Oh, we need to explain that. We need to explain that. It's like Star Trek, the 2009 one, doesn't explain fuck all. It gets just down to the business of telling its story with its characters, and it has a couple of moments that call back to, and it's fine.
And I guess if you're going to see young Kirk, if they hadn't had him do the Kobayashi Maru, we would have been disappointed. Because how did he cheat?
Yeah, that's the question. That makes sense. Oh, we know this event happened at Starfleet. Come on, that's part of our story, so you can do it. That's fine. But then when you get to the second movie, it's we're just going to reverse Wrath of Khan, and now you've got Spock savagely beating a man to death with a bit of metal, and it's well, that's not what Spock does.
Yeah. I read, just to slightly go back to Star Wars on this Star Trek podcast, I read a really interesting article the other day that was about how one of the ways that movies have become simplified in recent years is that characters are not allowed to lie anymore. And they specifically singled out Han Solo saying, oh yeah, the Millennium Falcon is the ship that made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. What do you mean you've never heard of it? And the guy was saying, from day one, people were like, that's really dumb. A parsec is a measure of distance and not time. Right? So then, I think they tried to maybe explain it in some of the books, but they also just kind of left it. But then in Solo, you find out that the Kessel Run isn't a fixed path. There's a way to do it in a shorter run to explain why Han Solo said that to Obi-Wan Kenobi. But in the subtext of the movie, Han Solo isn't saying that to Obi-Wan Kenobi because he wants him to be impressed. Well, he is, but he's saying it because he's lying. He's just making it up to make his ship sound more impressive.
He's doing it. I always read it as he's doing it to find out if Obi-Wan Kenobi's a rube.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to say this, and if you then say, that part doesn't make any sense, a parsec this, then I'll know I can't charge you the extra 500 credits for this trip.
There's a bit in the Obi-Wan show where where Darth Vader and Obi-Wan are going at each other, and Obi-Wan says something like, "I'm sorry that I failed you, Anakin," and Darth Vader says, "You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did," which is like a reaction to Obi-Wan saying, "Your dad was killed by Darth Vader." But he wasn't saying that to Luke because he felt that it was true. He was lying about it from a certain point of view.
He didn't want to mention, but I should point out at this point, like, Obi-Wan Kenobi is on Tatooine to keep an eye on Luke, and he knows that this kid is regularly able to bullseye wompats in his T-16, right? Which means he's probably one of the greatest pilots and shots in the galaxy, right? And is fine with satiating his urge to torture and murder harmless small animals.
Yeah.
So maybe not the great idea to tell him that his father is the evil leader of the Empire. Don't tell him that. Maybe he'll go insane and you'll have to cut his fucking head off.
And also, a Womp Rat, he turns around to Biggs and says, "I used to bullseye Womp Rats in my T-16 back home, and they're not much bigger than 2 meters. That's a tiger. It's like a bear."
Why?
I think it's probably an apex predator on Tatooine. You're just out there taking it out. It's probably endangered.
No, they were an apex predator, but then some rancors got loose, right? And it's like that thing, you let an invasive species into it. Tatooine used to all be grass.
Yeah, rancors, the cats of the fucking Star Wars universe, man. Keep your rancor inside, because otherwise it's destroying the ecosystem. And yeah, it's going to be a pain in the arse to enter that letterbox. But you know what? That's the gig. That's what you get. If you want a rancor to show you affection when it's an inside rancor, you're just going to have to take the sacrifice that you're going to have to be the one to deal with its literal shit. All right.
I'd love just at some point any director who was like pulling up, like creating doing a prequel or doing something else within like some established universe to like be asked in an interview by like somebody from the Nerdist, I don't know, or some fucking group of fucking twats, just have them go, "Oh, so are you going to address the controversy around such and such where so and so said this?" And just have them go, "Yeah, I just think they were lying. So no, I'm not gonna." Why does the character say that instead of saying this for the same reason that I've said a lot of shit that I am not? Movie characters aren't allowed to lie, but people promoting movies are, because like we've all seen trailers for Marvel films that had shit in them that wasn't in the fucking movie, right? But they can lie. That's fine because they do it because you people are simpletons. And like you need is like, "Oh, is Hulk going to be in the movie? I won't go to the movie." So I'll go, "Oh, Hulk's there!" Right? So yeah, so they have to explain to you in a trailer, "No, Hulk's not here."
Yeah,
for plot-based reasons. But no, anyway, and I do make you right. This is such a wonderfully weird, not just like. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were saying something that I completely agree with, which is if the first attempt by Nintendo to make a Mario movie was the Mario movie that is coming out now, no one would ever make the weird Mario movie that we got in the 80s. Yeah. Like there's sometimes you have to be the first. If you're the first person to do something, you can have a choice between playing it safe or doing something weird. And you should always do something weird, because if it doesn't work, someone can always play it safe later.
Yeah.
But if you play it safe and that does work, no one ever gets to do the weird thing.
So Superman Returns is the result of, as you probably well know, like decades of them trying to do another Superman movie and getting in Kevin Smith and getting in Tim Burton and all these cats, and Aronofsky was allegedly going to do it, right? But one of the ideas was by J.J. Abrams, and it was called Superman Flyby. And one of the things that it was going to add to the Superman canon is that I think there wasn't going to be a Fortress of Solitude. But at the end of the first act of Superman Flyby, Clark Kent was going to die, and he was going to go to Kryptonian heaven and meet his dad, and that was going to be how he figured out, oh, I'm a Kryptonian, that's why I'm really super strong and I can fly and things like that. And I think his dad was like a cop on Krypton or something. But Jor-El was just like a completely different dude. And that sounds bonkers, right? But I'd watch that because that's weird. I like it when they do weird takes on things. And you're right, no one is ever going to do that anymore because they're so beholden to the source material now.
There was a rumor floating around for quite a while that there was going to be a sequel to Gladiator, where Maximus Decimus Meridian finds himself in the ancient Roman afterlife, right? And as far as I can tell, the plot was basically the original God of War games, and and he was going to be like a recurring character who turns up at like various like wars through history, and it was going to bring him up to the modern day. And I'm just like, yeah, do it. Like Predator exists because, as some writers wrote down as a joke, Rocky fights an alien. And comes out of that. Like, I want movies like Mark. I'm going to tell you what the three movies that I am most excited about seeing right now. Right. Yeah, I am kind of interested in seeing the Mario movie. I've been waiting for it for years. I do want to see it. But the next two are Cocaine Bear and Violent Night.
I saw Violent Night.
Is it as good as it?
It's pretty good.
I don't even care because this is great. This is something I've realised about myself quite a long time ago. Is that I would rather watch. Here's the thing. All good movies are kind of. I'm not denigrating great movies. There are masterpieces out there that will make you feel things that touch your soul in a way that it can't be done through any other medium. But every good movie is sort of good in the same way.
Yeah.
Whereas every bad movie, some like bad movies can all be bad very differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this is. Like, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Star Trek: The Motion Picture to anyone. I'd have to sit down and go, do I think you should watch Star Trek: The Motion Picture? Right. First of all, you need to complete this questionnaire.
Yeah.
And if you give certain answers to certain questions, I could say that yes, you will get something from this. But it's fascinating to just like watch and go, try and unpick and go, well, why'd they do that? Like, why is there like you said, like they go into the warp drive, kicks in 15 minutes of slow-mo for no reason?
Yeah.
Was that going to be a recurring thing? Was that going to be something that the warp drive was going to do every time they used it from then on? Were they actually dealing with the concept of like time dilation and faster than light travel? Like it's bonkers.
My one question on the questionnaire would be, how do you feel about Blade Runner? And if they went, boring, slow, I'd be like, don't watch the motion picture.
Yeah, don't watch this.
Yeah.
My first question would be, what do you think about Blade Runner? If they said, yeah, I like it, I'm a big fan of it, that's like, oh, we're going down the right path. Then my follow-up question is, are you familiar at least with the concept of the movie Silent Running? And does it? And if the answer is yes, and it appeals to you, this is a movie you should watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. This exists. There is I like the idea that there is a timeline out there where this was hugely successful, and like Star Trek's a very different thing. Because I make you right about Wrath of Khan being the most like an episode, but I think that they're both very like different types of Star Trek episodes.
Yeah.
Like Wrath of Khan is the most like it's a bit of an adventure-y one, whereas this is more like we're going to ask an existential question about the nature of the human brain and comprehension and the exploration of space and why we do it.
Yeah. Can a computer that learns to think learn to think outside of the box?
Yeah.
Like, no matter how, is there a way to be the smartest thing in the entire universe and still be lacking in some sort of intelligence that we as human beings consider to be not even just part of everyday life, but just an essential part of existence?
Yeah. Another question is can a space probe be programmed so that it doesn't know its own name and somehow names itself by reading the side of itself, even though it couldn't possibly do that.
Yeah. Apparently, as well, there was a lot of script problems on the motion picture, to the point where they went into it with only the first 2 acts, and V'ger being the Voyager 6 spacecraft came about near the end of shooting.
Well, it's clearly it's one of the only sets they had to build.
Yeah.
I'd love to know if Carl Sagan was like, if at any point they reached out to him about this, because he was involved in the Voyager program. Because I imagine he would have just gone, everything you've described is scientifically impossible.
I would love, like, I want, if I could have an ideal dinner party where I can invite anyone from history, right? My man JC, right? Jesus Christ is coming. Biblical or historical, whatever. I'm sure they're both fascinating, right? But the other 2 would be Carl Sagan and Gene Roddenberry, because I reckon they fucking hated each other. And me and Jesus, he'll just be topping up the wine as we just watch the 2 of them go at it. Because they obviously both come at things from the same perspective of, yes, we should be exploring and we should be looking at things, and isn't the unknown really interesting? But I bet they fucking hated each other.
Yeah, because I'm willing to bet that like they've got that to a degree, and they get on right up until the point they get on very well right up until the very point where they really didn't. Where like, like Gene Roddenberry going, all of us should come together, put everything aside. Carl Sagan's like, no, we should combine our forces, and people from different nation states and different ethnicities should be allowed to like combine their efforts and go out into space. And Carl Sagan's, and then Gene Roddenberry's, even the women. And whoa, what do you mean even?
And Carl Sagan's like, imagine a 2-dimensional universe, right? Imagine it's just a flat sheet of paper, and there's a person in it, and the little person, he's a little square, and imagine the way that he sees the world. Like, he would have no concept of the 3rd dimension, and Gene's like, Are the circle ones women because they have tits?
Look, we wrote the script. We should go, what's a black hole? Nobody knows. Carl Sagan's like, no, we do. We got that. That's why Stephen Hawking's got a PhD. Yeah. 'Cause he worked all that out.
What's in there? Big library.
Big library in Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Who's Matthew McConaughey? It doesn't matter. It doesn't exist yet.
But it does in the black hole. And that's what 5th dimensionality is, my friend. It's, does Matthew McConaughey exist whether you believe in him or not? That's the real question you need to be asking yourself.
If Matthew McConaughey got sucked into a black hole, I still find the thing that would be the most interesting about it is, for some reason, it would really annoy Matthew Perry that it wasn't Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
What is that?
What would
every time somebody dies, he's like, "Oh, damn you, Keanu!"
What would you do with infinite Matthew McConaughey? Where would you put it?
Well, I'd get him back for season 2 of True Detective, because it went downhill after he. One thing I did want to point out. Did you notice that the music at the end of the film that was playing over the credits did sound incredibly like the Ghostbusters theme?
Yes, a little bit. That was a thing that this film had. Talking about old-timey tropes that this film had an overture.
Oh yeah.
What's that about?
Yeah, it does.
I welcome it. In fact, I wish more films had overtures, but this film has a. I was genuinely worried that my telly was broke, because there's just about 3 minutes of music on a black screen, and then you get the Paramount logo.
Yeah, it's weird, but then like. The music's good. Yeah. The music's really good.
This is the best. This might be the best science fiction soundtrack. Other than Blade Runner.
It's the not being beholden to having to do. Like, you couldn't. doing a Star Trek movie now would be like if the next Indiana Jones movie he didn't put on the hat.
Yeah.
Right? It's like it's the defining characteristic you have to put in there. But then we're like, is the music a big deal? Or is it just the music that we had on the show? Fuck it, let's do something else.
Yeah. Well, you say that. So Jerry Goldsmith, who created the tunes for this, you can actually hear part of his unused score. And they had Gene and the director in, and it's the Enterprise shot, the 25-minute shot of the Enterprise's hull, and Kirk and Scotty are in the space van, and the music that you hear, it's quite good. It's very similar to what it is, but apparently Gene and is it Roy Thomas was the director, stepped back and said, "This is good, but it's not Star Trek."
Oh.
And it was because not James Horner, he was another guy, but because Jerry Goldsmith he said, "Oh, I get it," because he was writing music about a ship at sea.
Oh, right. Okay.
Rather than a ship in space. So he went back, and then the next day he created the score, which is fair enough. Is good. Is good direction. Like.
Yeah, I mean, I love stuff like that. Like the fact that the movie The Hateful Eight by Tarantino basically only exists because he found out that Ennio Morricone wrote an entire score for The Thing that never got used, and he was basically like, "Well, I'm going to make a western with it," which is I like that because that's the kind of thing I'd do if I found like a tin that was like, "This is an unused Ennio Morricone score." Yeah, okay, fuck it, I'll make a movie.
Yeah.
I'll win an Oscar for best soundtrack.
I must have told you this story 100 times. I've almost certainly told it on this podcast before. But when I first moved into London, one of the guys I started working with was at film school, and he told me that his mate for their final class project they made a short film, and Andy Nyman was in it, which is pretty cool. It was like a little 15-minute short, and they needed someone to do the music. So his pal went, "Fuck it, we're getting John Williams." So he emailed John Williams to be like, "I've made this little short.
You never told me this story.
Can you do me the music for it?" And John Williams and his people got back to them pretty quickly, just being like, "No one ever asks John Williams to do this." So 100%. Yeah, I'm in. So there is a John Williams score out there that no one will ever hear because it's just in this dude's 15-minute short presentation for fucking film school.
Oh. Yeah, I love that because like John Williams is like, so it's not like I was doing anything else today.
Yeah,
15 minutes of music.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's amazing. That's up there with the fact that you can buy. Is it Stephen King's website you can go to and you can just drop in $5 and buy the rights to any of his short stories?
Oh, so that's it's the Dollar Baby. So it's you go on his website and there's a list of his books and short stories that are available. And if it's generally only students that he really gives them to, but if you're a student, you can say, "I want to buy the rights to this." He'll be like, "Yep, you can have it for $1."
It's like
Frank Darabont was one of them.
Yeah, he's Frank Darabont. The check that Frank Darabont wrote Stephen King for the Shawshank Redemption is just he's never cashed it, and he when the movie was released, he sent it to Frank Darabont framed, and it just says it's got written on it in case you ever need bail money.
I know that in the mid-90s when Tarantino was the hot thing, him and Robert Rodriguez were good pals, and Robert Rodriguez Tarantino is in Desperado, and he stars in it. He doesn't star in it. He's in it. And Robert Rodriguez, I think, wrote the music for something like Jackie Brown or something, like the incidental music, and they paid each other $1 to do it. That's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna say though, I like. Yeah, this movie, I quite like the black screen at the end and the text, just the human adventure is just beginning.
Yeah.
Which it had, like, it's mental to think that this movie shouldn't have existed. So they had no idea, even when they were making this. They, as far as they were concerned, this was like the last hurrah, like a final farewell to Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we never got Phase 2 off the ground, so we're just going to do this movie. Nothing, and as well, this movie did not do well financially.
No.
Like, it didn't do, like, it wasn't a guaranteed, like, we're going to get a sequel. This is like, oh yeah, this is the last Star Trek you'll ever see. Goodbye.
Yep.
I don't think the franchise would have survived this being the direction that it went in. But I'm very glad this movie exists.
Yeah.
I want to watch it again stoned.
Yeah.
I wanna get high as fuck.
Yeah.
And I would, if I don't know. Look, I have the joy of living in London, which is that there's the Prince Charles Cinema near me, and I have never once had an email from them saying, "Hey, we're showing Star Trek the motion picture."
They have, though. They definitely have shown it.
Yeah,
Because I remember seeing it was on, so I used to pop in all the time.
Yeah, the next time it's on, I'm gonna go see it.
Yeah.
On the big screen.
Give me a shout. I might come down.
Yeah, because I'm not. That's the thing. If you don't go down, I'm going alone.
Yeah.
Because
I'll bring some gummy bears.
Yeah, I'm not subjecting another human being to this experience. No. I just go, what is this?
Yeah.
It's nonsense.
You're either going to
It's
love this or
drawn
you're
out.
going to hate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe both.
Yeah.
Because like on an intellectual level, there's so much wrong with this movie that I don't like. I could sit down and go, for the same reason as like I love Blade Runner, but I'll never recommend it to anyone because I love Blade Runner, but it is the movie I've fallen asleep watching the most.
Yeah.
And I fully get if someone's like, oh no, it's not my kind of my cup of tea. I'd never recommend it. But yeah, oh god, I had a good time watching it.
Yeah. Huge. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah. Couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we I think that's like it.
Yeah.
We're going to say we will return to our regularly scheduled program in the new year, in which we get to see the first episode of the good series of TNG, where we answer the question: what likes to see stars explode and doesn't give a crap and has two thumbs? Bob Kelso.
Yep.
Have you got anything you want to plug that you've got coming up, Mark?
No, not really.
No,
to be honest.
No, me neither.
No.
No.
Oh well.
I might be doing a work in progress show in London soon, but I have to sort some stuff out. So
Nice.
yeah.
Well,
Anyway.
yeah, I hope he's enjoyed it. In conclusion, watch Star Trek the motion picture if you feel like it. If you don't bother.
Yeah.
I'm being like your dad.
Such a weird recommendation. It's like, if this is the kind of movie that sounds like the sort of thing that you might enjoy this sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh well.
Cheers for listening.
Bye.
Bye.